I met Rajiv Malhotra way back in 1990s, late 1990s. Not long after, I mean, actually pretty soon after he set up Infinity Foundation. And I had been invited to some of the early meetings he organized at his house, big conferences in America, in his house. And that's really how we met. He had come to meet me at Manushi, and I had no idea what a historic association this would prove to be, and how very inspiring his association will prove to be in my own life. See, to begin with, Rajiv presented himself as somebody who was very charged at the way his children had been maleducated in the US, how Hindu children were being taught the most noxious narratives in school, and growing up to be Hindu hating, self hating, because of the curriculum, official curriculum. I think that was how he explained his initiation into all these issues. And most of us at that time saw him as a corporate honcho who'd been eminently successful, but was equally passionate and driven by the desire to fix the narrative, the very noxious, the very poisonous narratives that had become part of the established curriculum in American schools as well as universities. Well, the same thing was happening back home in India. But Rajiv took it upon himself to say, I'm not going to take it anymore. So that's the point when I met him. In the initial years, Rajiv's strategy was to try and create a collective group of scholars who would work on issues of common concern and civilizational challenges that we're facing in India today, as well as NRIs facing in whichever country they are positioned in at that point in time. And he funded lots of people very generously and splashed money all around, including creating chairs in universities, including giving people projects to do. But not many people delivered. And they had expected that Rajiv would just continue with his lavish generosity, and they would teach him uh, what the issues are and how to go about it. There was that hidden, uh, both a hidden agenda as well as an arrogance in that, because he came from the corporate world and they thought, we know it better. We are professors in universities here, there, everywhere. We go lecture here, there, everywhere. So here's someone who learned from us. They had no idea that he was smarter than all of them put together. And within no time, he started producing such valuable books, well researched body of literature that actually outperformed all of them together, both in terms of the amount of intellectual scholarship Rajiv has produced in the last 3 decades. Just the sheer volume is awesome. But even the quality of research that has gone into it and the impact that it has had. And Rajiv doesn't write just for his own pleasure or to make a brownie point or to get invited to 5 or 6 conferences or publish in this or that journal so that it can be part of his CV. No, he has no need for embellishing his CV. He writes to make an impact. And so he brought something very unusual into social science research and publications, which is corporate efficiency. You don't just write a book, you make sure it reaches. So he has a whole plan of action, a whole strategy planned to make sure it makes a splash, not as an ego prop for him, but because he, like any efficient corporate honcho, they don't work just like that. They have set goals, targets, and he sets targets. He works it out as to how many copies this book must sell, who all it must reach, no matter what it takes. And he has that whole thing built into the writing of a book. No publisher works as hard as Rajiv ji works at promoting his own books and reaching the right people. And what's amazing is that he does not stand on ego. He will go personally to visit this one, that one, take his copy of the book, insist that they listen to him, make a presentation, irrespective of whether or not they are going to actually deliver what he expects of them to do. And he's done it so many times. But over years, I think he's become a little more cautious in lavishing his energy, just as he's much more cautious in lavishing his money. He targets his funds very carefully, no more splashing, very focused on what he's going to spend money on. And instead of relying on others to carry this movement forward, for lack of a better word, I would say it's a new wave of Hindu Renaissance. Of the kind we witnessed in 19th, late 19th century, early 20th century, when very tall figures arose prior to the Gandhi-led freedom movement, and who actually gave people a sense of pride in the civilizational heritage, which was being actually so defamed and so brutally crushed by the British, and prior to that by the Islamic rulers. Now, Rajiv has enormous self-confidence. It's very rare to meet a person with this clarity of vision, not just clarity, but focus. He's like Arjuna, who, when asked to shoot, only saw the eye of the fish, not even the whole fish. And he has no patience for either fools or for distractions. People who want to come and just waste his time yakking. Rajiv understood very well that his time is precious and he's not going to waste it on people who aren't going to deliver much. So, that focus, corporate efficiency, as well as rigorous research. He took nothing for granted. And when I say he took nothing for granted, because he was not from the academic background, he wanted to make sure that everything he did was well footnoted, was well documented. It was not just loose statements he was making. And that's why in his early books, the great emphasis on Purva Paksha. So he wants to tell them, look, I understood you well. I've read you carefully. Don't think that I'm just emoting. And very often in the early years, I used to find that a bit, I don't want to hear what Wendy has to say in such detail, or XYZ, who you're taking on. But then I understood, over the years, I understood the method behind that madness. He wanted to establish that he takes them seriously and his critique is serious. Now, in typical leftist style, as you know, they don't condescend to respond. Um, they thought they could uh, get by ignoring him. That they could get away with ignoring him, and that he would be history, that he would be cast aside in the dustbin of history simply because they didn't pay attention to him. They never would mention what he's writing. They wouldn't answer his critiques. They thought they could get away with it. But no, they had no idea who they're dealing with. And he made sure that they lost their luster, that they became bad names, be it Wendy Doniger or the man who wrote Sanskrit is Dead, um, John Hawley, Jack Holly, sorry, each one of the persons he targeted, he made sure that it hurt deep, that they became the laughing stock, that the shallowness of their research and their arguments and the malice behind it became well known, that they may get away with it because the university system in the US and in most Western universities was very badly screwed up when Rajiv started intervening. I hope with the rise of Trump and Elon Musk, things will change, that the university system, but will certainly wake up to the harsh realities that are staring them in the face. But at that time, they were dense and they were too smug and complacent. But I'm so happy and so proud of the fact that Rajiv actually shook them up very badly and certainly damaged their arrogance. He dented their arrogance good and proper. I think that's very important. Now, Rajiv's advantage is that he was self taught. He didn't have to study under Romila Thapar or Irfan Habib. He didn't have to please them to get good grades or get a job or a scholarship here or there. He didn't need them at all. So his mind could fly free. But equally important, I think he's one of the few to have actually sat at the feet of Dharmic gurus to get his Dharmic grounding right. So he's not just uh, talking of Hindu Dharma and the foundational values of our civilization as a politico. There are too many, as you well know, uh, political nationalists, Hindu nationalists with a totally political orientation. Rajiv is unusual in the sense that despite his very ultra secular education, he took deep interest in his own rigorous self education into Hindu Dharma. And he sat at the feet of some of the tallest gurus, engaged with them. He would go engage with Shankaracharya and not just Shankaracharya, but others who he thought had a lot to offer him. So he became deeply rooted in the Dharmic ethos, which I don't think many other academic scholars claiming to be Hindutvavadis or chanting Hindu Rashtra slogans. I don't think they took that trouble. So that again sets Rajiv apart. Now, the thing that attracted me most about Rajiv is also to do with my own personal history. When I started engaging with these civilizational issues, issues of social justice, issues of uh, political challenges we were facing in post independence India, still battling with the aftermath of colonization. India really didn't take its freedom seriously. It was essentially transfer of power. Now, when I started Manushi, that was in a way uh, a formal announcement of entering public life way back in 1978. I'd been active before that, but at the university level. And I had promised myself, I'd taken a vow that I would not make this work a source of livelihood for me, that I would keep my livelihood apart. I would not put 1 rupee in my pocket in the name of causes, but my relationship to Manushi and to the causes I pick up must be one of giving, not of taking. Which means anything I start, it must start with dipping into my own pocket and and continually maintaining that relationship of giving and certainly never taking. I didn't find any other person who followed this principle in my time. during the freedom movement, during 19th century reform movements, and earlier phases of our history, Hindus always did this. When they started Dharm Ka Kam, they didn't make it into a career option for themselves. They didn't make it into a source of livelihood. It was always one of giving. Rajiv is the only one I saw who did that on a larger scale, largely also because he had made his millions or billions or whatever. He was a very successful corporate honcho and one of the pioneers of the IT revolution in America. At the young age of 44, he winds it all up. And he says now his life is going to be for Desh and Dharma. And very astutely, he puts aside a certain comfortable sum of money for his family, their needs, his own needs, and the rest he puts in Infinity Foundation. So he started with, again, dipping in his own pocket. It's much later that he started raising funds because the scale of his work became much larger, far more ambitious than when Infinity Foundation had first started. And I really respect that a great deal because most others I know are making money from it. And to me, the moment you make your causes, there's a famous saying of Bernard Shaw, I think. Some people serve the cause while others make the cause serve them. So we have too many such people who are making the cause serve them. And it's a lot of jingoism and chest thumping, but very little giving, very little giving. Rajiv is one of the few to have given bountifully, not only by way of money, but also his time. And he did it at the cost of his own health, at the cost very often of his family, the time that they expected of him. Not that he ever would be an irresponsible father or irresponsible husband or a son. I've seen how he made sure that he fulfilled all those responsibilities as well. But still, the amount of time he put in is quite phenomenal. And because he had to start from scratch in a way, in the domain of scholarship, I think the speed with which he worked, um, it's as though demons were chasing him and he had to outrun them. He had to make sure they don't catch up with him. So, and each of his books has actually been a major milestone, be it the battle for Sanskrit. As I said, he's one of the few who have actually bashed good and proper American academics who were iconic, who were like demigods in the world of academia in America. Wendy Doniger, Sheldon Pollock, Jack Hawley, and a host of others. He named them and he shamed them without being abusive. Rajiv is very careful in his choice of words. He does not let his temper fly, and he doesn't allow himself to use words that he cannot defend. So there was very little they could do to cover their track record. Now, the other thing very unique about Rajiv is that with every book he has invented new vocabulary and coins that as slogans, slogans that become rallying points, be it um, theory of U-turns, theory of U-turns, or or Breaking India, for example, that book. Now, I remember from late 1990s onward, Rajiv and I would have long conversations about the functioning of these foreign funded NGOs. They were my bugbear. I was one of the few to have battled foreign funded activism as well as foreign funded academia um, almost alone. there were not many people who saw the point that I was trying to drive home, that the kind of laws we are enacting in India under pressure from foreign funded NGOs, or the kind of curriculum that we are following in our universities or in our schools because of the intervention of these foreign funded academics who were obviously being dictated from outside, uh, and their agendas were not even self defined. And I used to crib a lot about them. I wrote a lot against that kind of politics. Again, it was a lonely battle, but it was one of the most elevating, uplifting experience for me when I first held the book Breaking India in my hands. Because some of the concerns that I had raised with him from my little experience in India, he had done phenomenal research and proven with such foolproof evidence that this was not happening per chance, that this was part of a larger game plan. It was literally a conspiracy against uh, our civilization, the kind of curriculum, the kind of activism that was promoted in India, and how it was aimed very consciously and deliberately at tearing asunder not only the social fabric of India, not only our family structure, but also the political entity called modern India. He did it so well. For me, truly, it was one of the most uplifting experience to see somebody do that work and prove every hunch of mine right with such meticulous care that nothing need be said after that. Similarly, his book on Harvard. I remember being extremely unhappy um, with the kind of India bashing, Hindu bashing that was expected of me whenever I was invited to lecture in American or British universities. They wanted to hear only a certain kind of news. They only wanted to hear Hindu bashing narrative, not just India bashing narrative, Hindu bashing narrative. I wasn't able to deliver that, and I used to feel choked. And therefore, I remember one of the reasons I wrote in mid 1980s my most controversial and my most celebrated essay, why I do not call myself a feminist, because as a feminist, this is what's expected of you. And I said, no, thank you. Um, that's not my idea of women's rights, and those rights can wait, or I hand them over to you. But I will not travel that route. And when Rajiv demonstrated through his meticulous research what Harvard does, and Harvard as a case study, all other universities are following the same path in America, in Europe, even in Australia and faraway New Zealand. It's like a virus that is spread all over, and also inflicted us in India. Our universities are uh, treading the same path. So that book, again, very historic. It's one of the best examples of investigative journalism combined with academic research to prove a point with meticulous rigor. But what saddens me deeply is that despite his presenting not just the book, but actually going and meeting the education minister, the prime minister, and all the big shots who take decisions in such matters. His book, Snakes in the Ganga or Breaking India, he made sure it reached their hands. He made sure that they listened to his presentations. But instead of taking preemptive measures, they actually invited foreign universities to come set up campuses in India. The logical response should have been, we will discourage our students from going and studying in Harvard. We will blacklist them because they become a liability. And if people knew that if their children went abroad, they would have um, their career options in India would be very dim, that they would become unemployable if they came back with that kind of training and that kind of hatred towards their own dharma and their own desh and their own community and society, including their own families. They wouldn't send their children to these campuses, paying millions of dollars every year. India is bankrupting itself by sending students to universities that are actually mass producing Hindu bashers, India bashers. Um, and after reading that book, if the government had actually two penny worth of self-esteem, self-respect, it would have taken preemptive measures. But no, it did the very opposite. And it deeply saddens me. It's a matter of deep anguish for me that somebody like Rajiv should have remained so underutilized. If I had the power, believe you me, I would have, the first day in power, if I were the prime minister, which I know I'll never be, it's okay. But what I mean is, if I had the power or a magic wand, the very first action I would perform after getting that power or that magic wand is to have Rajiv Malhotra as the Education and Culture Minister of India and say, I'll give you a free hand, do it and do it fast. And he would have done. Our education system would have seen a thorough overhaul. But instead, actually, in the last 10, 11 years, we've seen the rot get deeper and far more nasty. The rot is now threatening the very survival of our country, our nation, because our education system is producing self-loathing, unemployable lumpens or self-loathing woke intellectuals, uh, Hindu bashers, who are actually a liability for the country, who are actually willing sepoys in the hands of breaking India forces. So it's in a way very tragic that somebody with his caliber, somebody with his commitment, somebody with his intellectual acumen and passionate zeal to do something for Desh and Dharma should not be in a position of power to make a difference of the scale that needs to be done if India is to survive, not just as a geographical entity, but as a civilization. And sadly, even all those that Rajiv counted on um, as fellow travelers, those he invested in heavily uh, when they were out of power, and he invested in them, he befriended them, he did all he could to orient them to what requires to be done for India. Um, they've not done justice. And it's not that they've not done justice to Rajiv. History will do him justice. But they have not just done justice to India by ignoring a man like Rajiv. And just as Sitaram Goelji today, his books are so much more sought after than they were during his lifetime. Hardly anybody read his books then. But today, they are being printed, reprinted time and again. Or Dharampalji, many like that. There's so many who were deliberately sidelined in their lifetime. But Rajiv is not the kind who will allow himself to be sidelined. No, he still remains centerpiece. He's now part of the lexicon that's used for describing many of the pathologies that affect India. He has made sure that he can't be ignored, but we have such thick-skinned and such shameless power wielders, such people in positions of power, they can't even be shamed. I feel very sad by that. But um, the work he has done has left a very powerful, very strong legacy. And there are millions who are grateful to him for that. And I'm sure these books will become um, valuable pointers to which way we need to go. Whenever India witnesses the kind of political turn that American politics has witnessed recently. So if America can suddenly produce Donald Trump, who thought it was possible? I see no reason why uh, Donald Trump's counterpart or an Elon Musk to back him up will not emerge in India, because these are ideas whose time has come. And if America is tired and sick of its wokeism, if Americans have started vomiting at the commie mafia, the Islamic commie combination that has ruined their society, their polity, their economy, their famous universities, if America could do it, I see no reason why India can't. And that's when the work that Rajiv has done will uh, occupy its place center stage. It still is, actually. There aren't many books that compare with the impact of Rajiv's books. So many of them. And I'm very grateful to him for having pioneered this work. And I feel very proud of the fact that I can count on Rajiv as one of my dear friends. I would also like to mention two major projects that we did together in the early years. As I mentioned earlier, I got to know Rajiv in 1990s, um, very soon after he had set up Infinity Foundation. And one of the products of those conversations and association was this these two international conferences we did together. We planned together. I was a professor at CSDS at that point in time. And even though CSDS was very hostile to Rajiv because the American academia was very hostile to him. So I was already a persona non grata for many among my left academic friends. In those days, to be Rajiv's friend was high risk venture. But I honestly couldn't have cared less. I made sure that they didn't interfere at all. These two conferences that we organized, the first one in 2002, as I said, the title was Religions and Cultures in the Indic Civilization. Now the word Indic has become so commonplace, but I think this was the first time it was being used. And more than 450 scholars participated in that conference. 3-day conference it was, I think. CSDS was the host, and it was the first one was held at India International Center and other facilities neighboring it, with a small budget of $20,000. In fact, my CSDS colleagues were amazed. They said we would have spent crores and yet not managed such a large gathering. So, despite the fact that Rajiv was uh, had rubbed the American academics the wrong way, and I was also battling the leftists and loony feminists and commies here in India, and yet they all came and presented papers, etc. And then it was followed by another one in 2005 with a very meager budget of $20,000, because we didn't pay anybody. Everybody paid for their own fares and they came. All we did was, I think, no, they even paid for their hospitality. They even paid for their um, accommodation in IIC or wherever we fixed it for them. Now, that actually triggered a lot of new thinking on these issues, even though at that time, I think for the first time, the so called right wing and the left wing came together because they never talked to each other. And both of us made sure that we did not exclude anybody so long as they stuck to the themes that we had listed. We had made pointers as to the themes that we want people to deal with. And some very good papers came. For the first time, as I said, left and right came together on a common platform. Both these times, 2002, 2005. I take the primary blame for the fact that we didn't continue further, that we didn't convert those papers into book volumes. Um, it would have required a lot more work. It would have required a lot more resources. I had already too much on my hands, Manushi and all its uh, pulls and pushes. So overworked. And Rajiv obviously counted on me to do it, but I couldn't take it forward because that kind of team had not yet been created. It required nurturing over time. But these were again major landmarks, and they would not have been possible without the help of Rajiv because I don't take foreign funding and I avoid funding that is coming from dubious sources. And such conferences are usually funded by uh, all these international donor agencies with their agendas. Uh, but as I said, we couldn't take it far enough. But then Rajiv took that work in different directions and he's produced amazing scholarship on the basis of his own initiative and the team that he has built uh, with his own blood and sweat, both together. Rajiv, I know that you've just turned 74, but in India, um, a well lived life is supposed to last at least 100 years. And these are your years of sannyas, actually. You know, there's supposed to be sannyas. For you, sannyas has taken this form of engagement. You started at age 44, which is sooner than what is expected of Vanaprastha ashram. So you took Vanaprastha at 44. Now, the years of sannyas, which means greater rigor and even greater achievements and productivity. You have to make sure you live at least till 100 because you have a lot of work to do. And given the kind of abundance energy that the divine powers have bestowed on you, you have so many blessings coming to you from so many directions. I hope that you will live at least 200 and make sure that you leave not just a legacy by way of your own scholarship and the scholarship you have produced with bunch of youngsters. You actually taken the trouble. I also admire that very much, that you spend a lot of time training youngsters to carry forward this work. Not many people do that, not even in the university system, the way you are investing in young people. But we need you for much longer, as energetic or more energetic as you've been all these years. Wish you good health, wish you success, and wish you long, long years of a very productive life. I think the best is yet to be. I'm reminded of these two lines of Yeats: grow old along with me, the best is yet to be, the last of life for which the first was made. So 25 और साल हैं राजीव जी आपके, and I may or may not live to see those years, but I'm sure the best is yet to come. You have very many long years of very fruitful and productive years ahead of you. My very best wishes. Namaste.